night was so dark that even the streetlights seemed lifeless, and within that silence, across several cities in the United States, a disturbing pattern kept repeating. People were suddenly disappearing. There were no clear signs of struggle, only an unsettling silence and a few incomplete clues. At first, these were treated as separate missing person cases, but as police began connecting the files, a horrifying pattern started to emerge. A man who would approach people by pretending to be injured or asking for help, luring them toward his vehicle. And from that moment onward, there was no return. Forensic evidence, eyewitness accounts, and cross-state investigations all pointed in one direction, and slowly the truth became impossible to ignore. These were not random incidents, but possibly part of a carefully planned series of crimes involving a central suspect known as Ted Bundy. When police began digging deeper into the case, each incident initially appeared unrelated. Different cities, different dates, and different environments. However, once investigators systematically compared the files, a disturbing similarity emerged. The victims were mostly young women who disappeared suddenly from their normal daily routines. There were no strong signs of forced entry, and no clear forensic evidence of a struggle at the scene, which made the case even more confusing. As a cross-state task force was formed, and data from multiple jurisdictions was combined, a pattern started repeating itself. Several witnesses described a man who would approach people by pretending to be injured or in need of assistance, asking for help, and convincing them to come closer to his car. From there, many victims were last seen alive. Initially, this detail was considered a coincidence. But when the same description appeared across different states, investigators began to believe they were dealing with more than isolated incidents, possibly the work of a single organized mind. Forensic teams reopened older cases and began re-examining evidence. Timelines were aligned, witness statements were compared, and case files were reanalyzed side by side. During this process, one name kept appearing repeatedly: Ted Bundy. At first, he had been seen as a normal, educated law student with a charismatic personality that allowed him to gain people's trust easily. However, as the investigation progressed, a very different reality began to surface behind that image. A pattern of deception, manipulation, and calculated behavior that could not be ignored. As surveillance data and witness statements were analyzed more deeply, law enforcement gradually closed in on him through coordinated cross-state efforts. When the arrest finally took place, and interrogation began alongside the presentation of accumulated evidence, it became increasingly clear that this was not a case of one or two isolated incidents, but a connected chain of multiple crimes involving planning, targeting, and repeated evasion tactics. Court proceedings later confirmed the scope of the investigation, officially establishing it as one of the most infamous serial murder cases in American criminal history, known today as the Ted Bundy case.